Alright, so X-Men Volume 2. Obviously, I have to say I can show this under the free rent usage for reviews. If anyone knows whether or not I can just put that in my description and have it work, please let me know, because I just don't want to take the chance and not be able to monetize it just for the couple of views I get anyway. But for X-Men Volume 2, I really like this one. As you can see from the front, we have Phoenix on here. Volume 3 starts with Dark Phoenix, but this one's just, regular Phoenix, which generally in itself is fairly dark. But, this one sort of wraps up with the Phoenix saga, which is actually, really cool. And obviously, with it being on the cover, you know, Marvel slash Disney, they knew, let's pretty much market this volume as the Phoenix Saga volume because it's a really huge part of the X Men universe and movies. Not I guess not so much in the live action movies, but in the comic books, it's a huge thing, and obviously with this X Men cartoon being really close to the comic books, it's once again a very big deal. But the first disc, it actually starts off fairly simple, just going through some of the episodes, some of the things that happen, some stuff, Cyclops and Jean, and Wolverine, him being in love with her, and characters kind of just going off doing their own thing. Professor X and Magneto are in the Savage Land, and just like in Volume One, a lot of time actually skips, and it's really interesting to see that after having watched the show from so long ago. It's weird to see how much time passes in just a couple of episodes. But it really is really cool. It goes through, and then one of my favorite things is Time Fugitives, which if you see my last review, I mentioned the Days of Future Past, two-part episodes. This is kind of like, I guess, parts 3 and 4 of Days of Future Past, where instead of Bishop going back in time, it's actually Cable going back in time, and he's further in the future than Bishop, and his future is still screwed up just like Bishop's. But when Bishop goes back and changes his past, instead of the Sentinels being the problem, it's a virus that's the problem. And when he goes, when that becomes the problem, a lot of people in Cable's universe or Cable's future end up disappearing. He doesn't even, his son doesn't even exist anymore. So he has to go back and stop Bishop from basically saving his future, because if Bishop saves his future, then Cable loses his, and he loses, like I said, his son. So it's kind of hard. Like, it was a great episode, a great 2 episodes to watch, because it's like obviously they're both good guys, and they're each trying to save like billions of people. And one of the things was, Cable said, if you let millions die when the virus pretty much first begins, then billions will live, for my future, even though it's still a very bad future. So it was really interesting to have that dynamic where they're both good guys trying to save a lot of people, but you know, either way, no matter how it goes, people will end up hurt, and you can't really just pick a side like I want Cable to win just because it's his son, because you know, just because his son, it doesn't mean he should get to win, but you don't want him to lose either, because he loses his son, he loses his friends, and the same goes for Bishop. Not his son, but he loses friends and things like that. So it's a really cool 2-part episode, and I love how it ended. Of course, I won't actually spoil it, but like I love how it ended. But one thing that I thought was really weird is that Cable is in episodes from Volume One, and like I didn't remember exactly what Cable's story was, but I did remember like he was from the future, and I thought it was so weird that him being in episodes before, it was like some things they said were like he worked for this one guy in the past, so it was weird that that didn't end up being connected in any way. It was just like he's in the future, and then he went back to stop Bishop. It didn't say he like went back further, and that's why he was in the like Volume One episodes or anything like that. So it was really weird that it happened that way, and I'm sure there's an actual explanation to that in the comic books, but they don't actually explain it in the show. So it just made it a little weird, because it was like I know Cable's from the future, and they show him, in Volume One, a couple episodes here and there, he does something, and then it's like, well, now he's in the future and he goes back, but he doesn't go back to like the Volume One episodes, and it's explained. It's just he just goes back, and there's no mention of him having been in the Volume One episodes. But aside from that little bit, the two episodes were still very amazing, and like I loved them. It was really cool to see how that see how it actually played out. After those two episodes, it really gets into a few character specific episodes. Like right after is A Rogue's Tale, and I really enjoy that episode because it shows Rogue how she grew up with her powers, and just a little cool things and how she interacted with I believe Miss Marvel. It's been a while since I actually watched this. I just finally get around to it, but I believe it was Miss Marvel, and she basically takes her powers for too long, and she puts Miss Marvel into a coma, and that's how Rogue is able to fly and has all the cool abilities of Miss Marvel because she basically held on too long and almost killed her. And one of the cool things about it was, her having absorbed so much of Miss Marvel. Miss Marvel's brain was inside of Rogue, and so she has this sort of inner battle with Miss Marvel's identity, and she has to, basically fight herself to maintain control of her own body, and she has to deal with all these crazy things, Mystique basically taking control of her and making her do that. And it was a really good episode. Like the one thing that was weird is once again some of the random inconsistencies were I think Pyro and Avalanche were training with Rogue and Mystique, and once again, Volume One episode, Rogue walks into a bar, and Pyro and Avalanche are in the bar, and they don't know that it's Rogue, and they don't know what Mystique actually looks like, and it's really weird that because they wouldn't have to know who Mystique was, because obviously she can shapeshift, so she wouldn't walk into the bar as herself, just because she's always doing something like weird, some sort of secret espionage type stuff. But they would know Rogue from the scenes that they showed in the episode. So once again, it was just like little inconsistencies that didn't really make any sense. That just stuff you remember, which I guess in the '90s when the show was on, you probably wouldn't remember because it would have been like months ago. But when you obviously watch it on DVD and you can like fly through it, it's like, well, like 10 episodes ago, she was like right in front of them and they didn't know who she was, and it's only like a couple of years isn't just gonna erase you for remembering the girl with like white hair or something like that. But aside from that, me nitpicking, of course, the episode was really well done. I remembered a little bit of the episode, and it was definitely one of the episodes that stuck out for me when I was younger, just because it was such a big deal. It was really an emotional episode for Rogue, having to deal with what she did to Miss Marvel, and it was just a really good episode that I enjoyed. After that, they have the episode Beauty and the Beast, which of course involves Beast and this woman that he loves who's blind. And once again, it was, a good love story episode for Beast. And with Beast being the character he is, he's basically trying to basically take down the wall between humans and mutants. And one of the things he does, him being an actual doctor, he does help with certain things. And there's a woman who's blind that he falls in love with, and she falls in love with him, and he says, you might not like what you see and things like that because of the way he looks, but she loves him anyway. And he has to deal with like her father who hates mutants, and then she ends up getting kidnapped, and so he kind of goes on a rampage, and he kind of has Wolverine help him out, and it's just a really good episode, and they do kind of end up together in the end. Obviously, I'm sure it doesn't it won't exactly expand too far beyond them in that one episode, but he does eventually end up with her in the end, and she does still love him regardless of what he looks like, and plus she knew what he looked like anyway, even without actually touching him. I forgot what she said, but she said something specific, and it was like, obviously, I know you're a mutant, and that's fine by me because you treat me well, and I love who you are as a person. So it was a really good episode for Beast, and with Beast not really being in Volume One because he actually goes to prison and stays in jail because of because of his character. This is a really cool episode because you get to see Beast pretty much more in this one episode because it's just him mostly than you really do throughout the rest of the series because of the whole him going to jail thing. After that, we get an episode of Mojo Vision. It was a really random episode they did. It was kind of like, it felt like a filler episode that would be in like an anime or something, where it's like you have all these cool stories going, and then you have this random episode where the characters get like picked up by Mojo, who I guess the best explanation I could give is he's kind of like a weird version of Arcade. And if you don't know who that is, the best thing I can explain to you is he's a villain who basically takes heroes and puts them into crazy situations. And specifically for the X Men, Arcade is the one who puts the X Men in like a giant pinball machine. But they get captured by Mojo. It's pretty much all of the X Men except for Professor X and Jubilee. Even though once again, me nitpicking, she is in some of the scenes where they just draw her in for some weird reason, and just kind of messed it up. But most of the X Men get captured and they're taken to this other place, like far out in the galaxy, and then they're basically put into this show in separate teams where they have to survive. It's a pretty cool episode because it's one of the episodes where they actually show other characters from the Marvel universe, and I can't think of the characters' names, but I did see like a scroll was in the audience. Um, they had the one villain whose name I really don't know, but he's like has like a blockhead. He's like a cinder block, and he's kind of like has like a baby mentality or something. And then that's really only from me seeing it in like the new Spider-Man cartoon. So that's really all I have for that enemy is like the enemy with the blockhead who looks like concrete. So that's all I can really give you. But I kind of enjoy that when they do it for like any show really when they just show random creatures from the universe because in this they also show like Deadpool a couple of times and it's really cool because not knowing who those characters were back then I know them at least by name now so when I see them some of the characters I recognize and it's like oh that's really cool that they put those characters in there even if it's just like a character is imagining it or it's just like sort of a panning shot of a giant crowd of people. It's like, oh, I can pick out some of these, actual characters from the Marvel universe that have a big role in the, if not in this series, but in the Marvel universe in some way, shape, or form. So it's kind of cool to see that. Other than that, the episode was just like I said, it was kind of a weird, random episode. Mojo was just like a giant weird blob character. His butler was really funny because he kept calling him like old bulbous one and like all this stuff that sounded really disrespectful, but it didn't bother Mojo at all. But it was just a really random episode, and that ended disc one. And jumping into disc two, it has reunion and then out of the past, and that's pretty much, if I remember correctly, it was pretty much all Savage Land stuff, and it was really cool. Is when they pretty much get Professor X back from the Savage Land. They go out and they find him, and then the Out of the Past, I believe, is Wolverine fighting against Sabretooth, which was a pretty cool, two-part thing where, Wolverine's trying to go off on his own, and it was just Wolverine dealing with his stuff with Cyclops and Jean, and then having to fight against Sabretooth. It was just a really cool, some cool episodes that I really loved. But then it really gets into the heart of it, and that is, of course, the Phoenix Saga. It's 5 parts to the Phoenix Saga, all great episodes. All the characters are really involved. Everyone's it's like the fate of the universe, and you got aliens coming in. Professor X is trying to figure out what is this connection. What is this mental link that I have. What's happening to me, and just all types of crazy things going on. And then eventually, Jean does become the Phoenix, and she it saves her life when she becomes the Phoenix, and then things just get crazier and crazier every episode, and there's some cool little hints that happen. Cyclops actually meets his father, but they don't know that they're father and son, even though Jean knows, but she doesn't actually tell him. And it's just a really great 5-part series, and it when it of course concludes, Jean has passed on. She has to basically stay as the Phoenix in order to protect the galaxies, and everyone's pretty much destroyed because they lost Jean, of course. More than anyone is Wolverine and Cyclops, because they loved her, and obviously Cyclops, and at this point they are actually married, and so of course he lost the love of his life. He lost the woman he married, and for Wolverine it is of course the same. He loves Jean. If you know the story, Wolverine loves Jean pretty much as Cyclops. Like I'm sure he would have married her if he could have, but everyone's pretty much destroyed, and it kind of just ends right on that note where you know Jean becomes Phoenix, and she basically stays and sacrifices herself to save all the people she cares about. And it's just a really good 5 part episode or 5 part story that wraps up very well. Certain things, like I said, Cyclops meeting his dad, and his dad's group. They all they start off as like space pirates, but then it's like, okay, we kind of have to betray this bad guy, not only because he, like Cyclops' father had a vengeance with him because he killed his wife, who is of course Cyclops' mother, but then they eventually find out if he actually does have this power, he can destroy everything. So we do all have to team up and become good guys, and it's not just X-Men and space pirates. It's us trying to save ourselves and everything else. So it's a really cool little bit, and it's a great way to end it. Of course, it would have sucked if it ended like on episode 4, or like 3, or if it just started with the first episode and then stopped. So fortunately, they do, they started and they ended all in this in this one volume, and that's really good. And I am excited for Dark Phoenix the in volume 3. So definitely check out X-Men volume 2. Great episodes. Like I said, Phoenix Saga, if you love Phoenix, volume 2 and volume 3 are definitely the ones for you. Like I said, Phoenix Saga in this, and then Dark Phoenix Saga is going to be in volume 3. And thanks for watching. Oh, actually, one weird thing about this is Nightcrawler's on the front right there. I have no idea why they put him on the cover. He's not in any episodes at all. That's just, I don't know. He's on the cover, not in there, and he is in volume 3, but I don't know. He's on the cover and not there. But comment below if you've seen any episodes, or anything you want to tell me about X-Men, anything that you might remember from X-Men, some stuff you like about the show, that you feel like some of your favorite story that was pulled from the comics and put into the show. Mention those things, like that. Favorite elements, of course. Even little stuff, voice actors, because personally, I don't think I mentioned this in my last review, but I do love the voice acting for the show. I think everyone is done very well. Like, the craziest thing was, once again, Mojo, and that is the actual character. So once again, even that was done well. It was over the top like it should have been. But even the smallest elements, comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.